Welcome to Profiles in Leadership Interview Series, sponsored by VGM Advantage. I'm Steve Anderson, your host, and today our guest is Michael Brochu. Michael Brochu is a seasoned technology executive who has over 20 years of senior level experience at a variety of global companies. Most recently, he was the president and CEO of Global Market Insight, developer of technology platforms serving the market research industry. The company was acquired by WPP. Prior to that, he served as the president and CEO of Loudeye Distribution Services, which Nokia acquired in 2006. Before Loudeye, Mike was president and CEO of Primus Knowledge Solutions, Inc., an award-winning provider of e-service software solutions. In 1999, Brochu took Primus public and facilitated the acquisition of the company by ART Technology Group in 2004. Brochu was also executive chairman of On Health Networks from 1997 until it was sold to WebMD in 2000. Previously, Brochu served as the president and COO of Sierra Online, Inc., one of the world's largest publishers of interactive entertainment, educational, and home productivity software. There, he spearheaded efforts that increased sales by more than 300%, accumulating with the sale of Sierra Online to CUC International for $1.1 billion in 1996. Mike currently sits on the board of directors of Centro Digital Media, Hop2 Inc., Zotec Partners, and the advisory board of the Seattle-based venture capital firm Voyager Capital, which was also one of GMI's early institutional investors. Mike was also named Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2000. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Steve.
That's a lot to say, but it's an impressive resume. So now you're a Texas boy, right? So
I am.
Tell us where you grew up and the humble beginnings, where you came from.
So I grew up in West Texas, El Paso, Texas. I'm one of 7 children. My mother still lives in the 1,500 square foot home that I grew up in. I learned to get by with 1 bathroom and a bunch of siblings plus my parents. And so my father, who was a very loving man, was also obviously a very disciplined man. And the most you got, especially having sisters, was maybe 5 minutes in the bathroom. Yeah. So I can get ready pretty fast.
That's great. So how does someone who grew up in a small town like El Paso become the CEO of these very influential companies?
Well, you know, my dad came from very humble beginnings, and we didn't have a lot. But the one thing that he did have was his own style of leadership, if you will, which is what these series are all about. He taught us to go after the best, always strive to do the best we could, show up, do it right the first time, be on time. A lot of things in there that got all of us children, all of us went to college. My parents did not attend college, but we all went to college, however we got through there. And it was through that process of growing up and just wanting more, I decided I was going to be somebody.
Yeah, that's great. Now you lost your father much earlier than you'd hoped to, so he passed away some time ago.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were brought in to take care of these companies that kind of hit the skids, you might say, or maybe weren't growing quite as much as they should, and then it was your job to come in and turn them around. So explain to us a little bit what the goal was to bring you on board and what you saw your mission was in those companies.
What I love to tell people is that I really never invented anything. Often, somehow I decided that after growing up in a large company the first few years of my career, I said, I know how to do this. I think I can do this on my own. And I was given an opportunity to run a company and take over for a founder who had, as you had mentioned, had sort of hit the wall. And this happens a lot. You see it a lot where a founder, great idea, product, service, they bring it to market, it's wonderful, but then the company grows, expands, and their lack of sometimes business skills or ability to really take it to the next step becomes apparent.
Yeah.
Usually these guys have gone out and sought other investors, so investors saying, look, we'd like to see a return here. So with my background, I would get called upon and say, hey, look, can you come in and advance the ball? Move it, take it public, get it sold, one way or another improve the company.
Because often those investors see that that's probably not the right person, as in the founder, to take it to the next level, so they want to hire somebody who can do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, often I would argue they wait maybe a little bit too long in hopes that they can right the ship. But yeah, my job was basically come in and say, look, we're here, we need to be here, can you get us there? And I'd take a look at it and say, sure.
So when you went into these companies, what do you think, and I'm being general here because I'm sure each one's unique in its own way,
Right.
but what do you see as, what are the kind of common hurdles that people hit that they can't get over? Or what are things that you did kind of consistently when you came in to take these companies that had hit the wall and then you grew them to where they could be worth more value?
There's many things,
Okay.
and I'm going to argue that a lot of them were very common with all of the companies. Founders often start off by themselves. They started in a garage. There's 3 of them. They do everything. They get used to doing everything. But as a company grows, that's physically just impossible. You start hiring people. Often people hire their friends. So when I get in there, I find there's often a lack of skill level. There's very often a lack of leadership because what happens is the founder is used to doing everything, continues to do everything.
Yeah.
Well, that becomes almost impossible, and it certainly becomes inefficient. And so what you see is a whole lot of people that are really being asked to do things that are maybe above their ability or maybe beyond their scope. And so getting either those people in the right positions or getting new people in the right positions is one of the keys to helping that company grow and continue to prosper.
So if we look at the Jim Collins bus theory, you got to have the right people on the bus, and then if they're the right people on the bus, they got to be in the right seats.
Right.
Were you getting people off the bus, or were you getting them in the right seats, or a combination of both?
It's definitely a combination of both.
Okay.
One of the first things I would do when I entered a company was understand, first of all, the business model. What is it that we make, and for who? And then once I did that, then understand how every individual in that company, or almost every individual, what do you do to help make that happen? What is your role? What is your position, if you will? What is your seat? And through that process, you found people that are great, and they're doing as good a job as possible. You found people that maybe with a little training could be great, and then you found people that were in the wrong seat.
Kind of the fluff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in the wrong seat. And you go, hey, and very often it's, now coming in and not being the founder, I had a non-emotional platform from which to work. This wasn't my brother, it wasn't my sister-in-law, it wasn't friends and family. I could go in and say, okay, this is a job that needs to be done. This is a job that doesn't need to be done. And it's ferreting through all of that process where you get the right mix of people. And even with that, it continues to evolve. As you grow the company, you get better and better. It's no different. I use NFL football analogies all the time. You get a good quarterback in place, and then he's getting killed, so now you need a good line, and now that's working. You got a good offense, now you need a good defense, and you slowly over time build your Super Bowl team, always with the goal in mind.
So how do you do it in a sense of building or maintaining or even growing the culture without getting people like, oh gosh, here comes the new guy and he's going to make all these changes, and I'm sure there's a lot of fear factor there. And then you have to make some hard choices. So how do you build the culture?
Oh, that's a multi-day discussion, and it takes a lot of time. But you have to begin right away by building first the kind of culture, and you use the word, the culture that you want.
Right.
People want to win, and people want to feel valued, and people want to feel like they contribute, whatever role that is, right? And so you immediately have to start figuring out who can contribute, what does winning mean, and then make sure that people understand. If people understand why they're doing something, then it makes them a lot better at what they do. So I would go around and say, what is it that you do? And why is that, how is that helping me? Because here's what we're trying to do as a company. And 9 times out of 10, they could explain what they do and why, and that'd be great. Occasionally they get somebody that doesn't. My favorite story there is I came into one department, it was payroll. And I went to the head, and it was a young lady, and I said, so what do you do? She says, Mr. Brochu, she says, I run payroll. You know what that means? I make sure you get paid. I went, good job. You keep it up. You know,
Yeah.
we're good.
She understood her mission.
She understood her mission
Yeah.
and how it affected. She said, I make sure people get paid in this organization, so then they're not worried about that aspect of it,
Yeah.
and they can do their jobs. So she understood her role, and if people understand their role and then how it fits, now part of that, and to get the fear factor out, is that you have to establish, guys, here's what we're trying to do. You know,
Yeah.
we're trying to win the Super Bowl, or we're trying to win the game, or we're just trying to score.
You got to give them that
You know,
vision. You've
You got to
gotta
give them that vision and say, okay, so how are you helping me do this, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody says, well, I take this stack of papers and I move it from here to here, and you go, why? And they go, I don't know, because it's my job. Well, you've got a problem,
Yeah.
right?
But I love the way that you said that you came in and asked them and got their opinion before you know, because I guess the bias would be, oh, he's just going to come in and say, I know exactly what to do and do. And it doesn't
Right.
sound like you did that. You went
Not at
in,
all.
you asked people,
Yeah.
got their input, showed them that you cared and that you were interested in their position, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And you heard them, and then you made the changes.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
So what do you think the biggest mistake that companies make when they kind of hit that growth skid? When do they stop growing?
They try often, I think, to stretch people. They become emotionally attached, particularly it's about people. They become emotionally attached to people, and they often try to stretch people too much.
Yeah.
And you know, as much as you love somebody, and oh, she's been with us, you know, she was our third employee, okay, and she came in as a secretary, and now she's vice president of marketing. Maybe she's built that skill set and evolved. More often than not, she hasn't, and she was a darn good secretary, you know, a darn good admin. But you know, often you say, all right, I've got people doing things.
Maybe promoted for the wrong
maybe
reasons.
promoted outside of their abilities,
Yeah.
right?
And sometimes a lot of times you see companies as they evolve and grow, sometimes people kind of hit their limits. They can't go beyond that
They hit
with
their
the
limits.
companies.
Yeah.
So.
The second biggest mistake I've seen is that people don't know why. Why are we doing this, right? I think the number one thing you can do to help people really perform for you is have them understand why. This is why what you do, whatever it is, whether you're in the depths of the accounting organization or in human resources, you're out in the field selling, you know, some jobs are obvious, but some jobs it's going, you know, people they don't understand the why, and they can either get complacent or they start losing their skill set.
Right.
They do it as good as
So
they can.
even down to the lowest level, they need to understand the
They
why.
need to understand why and how they're important to the organization.
Yeah.
And if they don't know why they're important to the organization, then how am I going to know why they're important to the organization? And then we've got a bad equation here.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Something's got to happen.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
How would you describe your leadership style?
That's a great question. You know, I've already touched on it a little bit. You know, I believe you hire the best people possible.
Yeah.
I believe that you have to set in front of them what the goals are. You know, are we going to score touchdowns? Are we going to win the Super Bowl? What is the goal? I think those goals have to be reasonable goals, reachable goals. And then I believe you let people do it. My most personal famous example of that is my style wasn't always one of that. It was just, you know, make it happen. But one day I was in an organization and I was, you know, I had to prove a point to a higher up. So one of the people working for me, I said, hey, look, I said, I need you to build me a spreadsheet. These are the columns I want, these are the rows I want. And he looked at me, he said, why don't you just tell me what you're trying to prove? And I sort of, okay, well, here's what I'm trying to prove, whatever I want. I need to prove that this is what happens. He says, I'll build a spreadsheet.
Let me handle it.
He came back with a far more eloquent solution than I was coming up with. And I said, all right, just let people know what it is you want and let them use their skill set and say, okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, help me.
Yeah.
And, you know, these people are educated, you know, they're good at what they do, and they go, yeah, okay, I know how to make that work.
Yeah.
And then help guide them along the way, obviously. So I'd say my style is more of best people possible, get people smarter than you. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And let them run.
Yeah,
just let them run.
That's awesome, because I know that's easy to say that and talk. Right. I actually ran into one of your senior level executives not that long ago, but he confirmed just what you said, which is Mike is very good at hiring great people, then letting them do their jobs and not micromanaging them, giving them what the goal is, as you just stated, and then let them do their jobs. And
Absolutely.
That really works.
Yeah, the only other key to that is there will be a time when there's conflict.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to make the call.
Right.
I can make the call.
You can make the call. That's
no
important.
question.
Yeah.
No question.
So it's hard to build a team with those. It's not hard to build a team with those you know and trust. So when you come into a company, again, we use the football coach analogy. Isn't it kind of, well, I'm going to bring in all my own people and put them in these high-level executive positions, and then we'll do it. But I would assume you probably can't do that 100%. Right. So how did you maneuver that landmine?
Well, you know that you do have that flexibility. Typically, from at the board level, I said, all right. One of the things that I just virtually know without knowing a lot of people is that we will have to swap out some folks and bring in some people. So you do have that capability, but you don't just do it arbitrarily. You want to make sure you go in, you understand. Like one of the best mentors I ever had said, look, the first thing you have to do is really understand your business model, understand what it is you make, who you make it for, how much it costs to make, and how much you can sell it for. So, because if one doesn't equal the other, then you don't have a business. Once you know all of that, then say, okay, now who's contributing to that, and how important. And it's actually not that hard at some level. You can almost put them in three groups. You can say, all right, keeper, this person knows, he's my head of this or that, or Baldness knows what they're doing, perfect. This person I need for a while, but probably is not going to grow with the job.
Right.
Certainly not, someone that needs to leave the organization. And then you are always able, and people know, even the people in the organization. Joe over there, we've had him a long time, but I'm not even sure what he does. And it's, if you go around and you work with and you talk to, and there is a lot of that management by walking around, just finding out what people do and why they do it. And you can discern, reasonably quickly, who falls into those what buckets.
Right. So how do you describe success when it comes to business?
Well, I'm a business guy. Right. And I do some guest lecturing for a couple of universities and all that kind of stuff. And I always start with the same basic. I say, guys, a business means that whatever it is you make costs less to make than what you can sell it for. If it's the other way around, it's a hobby. Okay. So it starts there. People invest in a business because they expect a return, and not that it's all about money. But a business means I sell a product to a group or a service, product or service, whatever you want to use, for more money than it costs me to make it. Right. That to me defines a business. Right. At some point down the road, we're going to make money for somebody. If I'm a sole founder and it's all mine, then it's all for me. If I've got 10 million investors because I'm a public company, then it's all for them. But that's basically how I define a business.
So you are a self-proclaimed cowboy from Texas. So how does that frame of reference transfer to your savvy CEO, being a savvy CEO in the business world?
I think that I'm a Texas boy, and my heart and roots are there, of course, and most of my family lives there. I think there's a couple of maybe stereotypical but general attributes. Rough and tough, friendly, chivalrous. We know how to treat people right. We still say yes sir, yes ma'am. We take risks. I rode bulls for a whole season, and while I was in college.
That's real risky.
Yeah, that was pretty risky. Not necessarily really smart, but really risky. I think it's a culture and attitude. Texas was at one time an independent state, country, if you will, territory, and so there's a sense of independence. So I'm not just going to roll over and just because you say it real loud or real fast doesn't necessarily make it true.
Yeah.
And so I've got a certain amount of healthy skepticism, and I think all those things start to add up. And and I think at the end of the day, we know how to treat people, and I mean that in a nice way.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to get a lot further along that way.
Yeah. You are now on several boards of companies, and what is it that they expect from you being in that position? So they're going to hire you to be on their board, and so what do they want from you?
So typically, as you laid out in the introduction, I ran a number of different companies. So one could argue that I am not a domain expert. And it's the same with these boards. I'm not the domain expert. But what I am is the business guy, the operational guy, the guy that they can seek to and say, okay, so how do we do this better? So most typically it's that. Also, the other underlying theme for all these companies that I've been involved with has been technology. So we've got a business technology guy, and that's often the role they're seeking from me to play when I'm on these boards, regardless. One of these companies in Indianapolis is in the healthcare revenue billing space, and other one's in the digital media space. So, neither is a space that I've been into necessarily myself as a CEO, but
right.
I can learn enough. Most businesses, as much as people esoterically like to say how complicated businesses are, they're not, right? It's what do you make, who do you sell it to, how much can you get for it? That's most typically my role.
Yeah, that's great. So if we can agree or assume that we learn more from our mistakes than our successes, what's the biggest mistake you made that you learned a lot from?
There's been, unfortunately, and I wish I could learn from the first time, but there's been a number of mistakes where I've held on to someone too long.
Yeah.
Too long. That's probably the toughest one, and because I'm human like the next guy, and as hard and cold as I like to think I am under this rough, cruel exterior as a sensitive little guy. And there have been times where I've held on to personnel that because I like them, or I'm going to give them one more chance, or I'm going to give them a bigger chance than normal, and it just hasn't worked out, and you go, okay.
Yeah.
That makes it tough.
It makes it even harder the longer it goes on.
The longer it goes, it does make it tougher. It makes it a lot tougher. And it has an impact. It has an impact on a lot of other people. What you ultimately have to realize is that it affects a whole lot of other people too. And they know it, and maybe you don't know it or you ignore it because you say, okay, I'm going to keep this guy or this gal around. And then when you finally go, everybody goes, finally.
Yeah, like dummy,
okay.
what took you so long type of thing, yeah. So let's get into some fun stuff. Now, I know that you and your wife are winemakers now.
Oh my gosh.
So what interests you about that, and how do you have a wine business that you enjoy, as you said, as a hobby, but you don't go bankrupt at the same time?
Right. We got into it clearly as a hobby. It was clearly juxtaposed to anything that we'd ever done. It's a little bit my Texas, it's kind of farming, not really ranching, but it's farming. Try going to a party of your more sophisticated friends and telling me you just bought raw land in Argentina to plant grapes because you're going to make wine. They look at you kind of funny, go, let me know how that works out for you.
Exactly.
But it's actually worked out well. Yeah. And it goes to show that a lot of luck. We got into Malbecs before they were popular, and now we make a nice Malbec wine. When we realized that we could make far more wine, and this was our naivete, but we could make far more wine than we could drink, we go, ooh, well, what if we try to start selling it? But one of the things that we did from the get-go, and it relates very much to this entire conversation, from the very start we said, look, we are going to make the best wine possible. Much to everybody's chagrin, they said, well, you'll never sell it because you'd have to charge too much. Plus, people don't really care. They don't want that. They're fine buying a $10 bottle of wine in the grocery store and that kind of thing. We go, well, okay, I don't care. We're going to make the best wine possible, and it's been our mantra. It's turned out really nice. It's gotten some nice ratings and all of that. So the biggest thing about it is it's become so much fun. We get so many texts and emails and those types of things from people that that are celebrating an anniversary or a graduation or a birthday or something, and they've got a bottle of our wine and they're proud to show it, and that just makes us feel good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I also know you to be an avid cyclist, skier, golfer. So how do you keep those competitive juices flowing throughout your retirement years?
So, to me, it is about balance. I like to think, as a general rule today, my wife and I, we work about a third, we play a third, and we take that very seriously, how we play, and we try to give back to the community about a third. And it's not an exact science, but that's kind of the way we like to work it. And it's because of those things that it still allows me to keep my competitive juices. I still race a little on my bicycle. My wife and I both ski race a little bit. We do some things to make it competitive. We play a little competitive golf, whether it's just my brothers and we got our own little tournament going, things like that. But we certainly challenge ourselves in our.
So even in retirement years, you're still taking a few risks out there.
I don't know. Yes, we are, and I don't know how I had time to work. I mean, we are so busy in our so-called retirement years that it's been unbelievable.
I think it's real interesting though how you thought it out in the third, as you described it, in thirds, because I don't think a lot of people do that. I think they just hit it and kind of let it evolve, and then you can definitely be out of balance, or you can end up doing nothing, which some people don't do well with either. So.
Well, you're exactly right. When I first decided that I didn't want to work full time anymore. We almost don't use retirement anymore. It's okay. I don't want to work full time anymore.
Right.
I was asked and recruited to join a few boards, which I was complimented in doing, and I do that. But I could see where that was going to get out of line very quickly. I go, okay, I could spend my life, because I'm as dedicated as the next guy, and I want to make sure that I give my attention to whatever effort that I'm being asked to engage in. And so all of a sudden, I was up to a number of boards. I'm going, okay, this is starting to.
There's travel involved.
There's travel. I mean, you got quarterly meetings, you got phone calls, and you got a lot of other study and whatnot. You want to stay on top of the activity. So, I said, all right, I need to sit back and reflect on this and decide, all right, how much is enough of each of these? Because we do want to, we obviously want to play, and we did want to give back more than just writing a check. We wanted to give back to the community. So we wanted to make sure we could afford some time and do those things as well. And it's like I said, it's not an exact science. It's not a spreadsheet, but it's a general philosophy.
That's impressive.
Okay.
So we like to kind of end these interviews with what we call a pearl of wisdom relating to leadership. So if you were going to give us a pearl of wisdom in relation to leadership, what would you say?
I believe that leadership is not dictatorship, it's leadership. And leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do themselves. And for them to do that, I think it requires two things. It requires a goal, call it a vision, a goal. Again, use the NFL, we want to win the Super Bowl, or we just want to score a touchdown, whatever it is. And it's important that the individual that you want to lead not only understands that goal, but understands their role and how they can help in accomplishing that goal. If I know what I'm doing, I will follow. If I know why, and most people, if they know why it's important, why is it important that I solve this payroll issue? Why is it important? Whatever it is, whatever their lot in life is, if I know why, and I know what the bigger picture is, and if I know that when I get the why, it's contributing to that bigger picture, I'm a part, I'll play, and most people will. And it makes it easier.
It's interesting because it brings up the question that's been debated a lot in business. Can you motivate people? In other words, do you see yourself as motivating people to do something wonderful, or do you think people need to motivate themselves, they just need to know where to go with it? And so I think what I hear you saying is that you need the people that can motivate themselves, you just need to get them on the right track and get them going.
They just need to understand. If they understand, sure. And everybody's different. I got one little vignette. One time I had the most wonderful admin early in my career. She was awesome. She was so awesome. She was promotable, and she was very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So I promoted her without asking her. I promoted her to a new job. She came into my office crying.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want that new job. She was very happy doing exactly what she was doing. She says, I want to do exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing exactly, and I want to contribute that way.
Yeah.
So I missed a piece there.
It's a good lesson.
That I learned. It was a great lesson, right?
You
Say,
didn't
okay,
listen to what she wanted. You just assumed
Right.
she would want that.
right.
So, yeah.
So it's being able to translate your goal into what that person wants, what they're capable of, and how they can bring value to the whole system.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. I really
Totally
enjoyed
fun.
talking with you. You've had an amazing career.
It's been fun.
It's awesome. And so just want to thank everyone for viewing Profiles in Leadership interview series today. And thank you to VGM Advantage for sponsoring this. And if you want to check out all of our podcasts and video interviews, go to vgmadvantage.com and check it out. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. It's been an honor.